Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
This is Eric Rummel at the 2011 Miami International Book Fair, and I'm interviewing Sandra Beasley, author of Don't Kill the Birthday Girl, Tales on an Allergic Life. So Sandra, thanks for joining me today and taking time on your schedule. I really appreciate it. Tell me a little bit about the book. How did you get your motivation to write this?
Well, I'm a poet by trade. I have 2 books of poetry. The most recent, I Was the Jukebox. But if you go back to my first book, you'll see a little sequence called Allergy Girl. And it was my attempt to work with my life experience, which is severe multiple allergies that range from dairy to egg to tree nuts to soy to beef to shrimp to mango to cucumber, and incorporate that into my worldview. And I enjoyed the poems, but I also knew that there was a bigger story that needed to be told. More science, more research, talking with parents of children with allergies not my own, and I wanted to tell that story.
So I have to ask you, was it a hard conversion to go from writing poetry to doing a storytelling almost?
Well, I had been writing some short pieces for the Washington Post magazine off and on, so I started to kind of dip my toes into the water of prose. But yeah, it's very difficult, and I think that one of the funny things has been sometimes when I've read from the book, I'll read a paragraph and realize the first and third and second and fourth sentences rhyme, so the poet's kind of hanging in there a little bit, but it was definitely changing gears.
That's really entertaining, and the book is filled full of laughter and just a fun viewpoint, of the situations things going on. But I have to ask you, being as many allergies that you have yourself, obviously this hasn't been a fun ride for you to go through and discover all these things. Is this kind of your way to alleviate and to put some of that out there, some of the trials and tribulations and things you've gone through?
Well, I'm very, very honest about my experiences in the book, and I tell people it's a memoir, it's not a manual. And even though I've done a lot of research and have a kind of sense of the gestalt of what's going on with food allergies, there are moments in there that would make my own allergist cringe. Times when I should have gone into the hospital, but I didn't because I didn't have the money for the copay for the emergency room. Times when I should have used my EpiPen and I tried to use Benadryl instead. So yeah, those are fraught moments, they're scary moments. In writing the book, I'm in a way trying to create an umbrella for other people to be more honest about their experiences, particularly teenagers who are maybe starting to test the boundaries of caring for their own allergies rather than having their parents do it for them. And I think it's really important that the dialogues about that be as honest as possible.
One thing we talked about before the interview was kind of the situation where a lot of parents end up passing these down to their children, a lot of these allergies and these different conditions that they have. Is there any words of advice you can give to a parent that maybe has not had these experiences with allergies and all of a sudden they wake up one day and they have, either a toddler or a teenager or someone exposed to these? Is there any recommendations you can give them or advice?
Well, one general attitude to adopt, I think, is to, one of the difficulties with allergies is that we have to ask these very small children to carry pretty powerful medications, an EpiPen, an epinephrine auto-injector, a Benadryl, an inhaler. And I think it's really important to, in communicating to your child what their condition is, how to use these things, approach it with empowerment, not with fear. Don't say, oh my gosh, you are in so much danger at all times that you have to carry this little, mini medical kit. Instead say, what's great is that even though you have to deal with these allergies, if you start having a reaction out in the real world, you have everything right there that any doctor standing by your side would want to use on you. So you are empowered to go forward and test your boundaries and adventure a little bit. And I hate the thought of a child who thinks that they can never eat out at a restaurant, that they can never travel abroad. It's not true. You just have to learn what to do to keep yourself safe.
I think that's really refreshing because I think so many parents and physicians nowadays overwhelm children. It's like they're fearful to go outside. Oh, I can't get stung by a bee. Oh, I can't eat peanuts. Is that cooked? And, now I think we've almost conditioned our society. You go to restaurants and big posters, this restaurant uses, any kind of peanut derivative or all these warning signs. I think it's a great stance to empower parents to help teach and educate their children. Is this something that you think you're going to continue to go on and maybe write another book about or something to continue traveling with?
I think that the conversations that I'm having with this book have been so rich, and the paperback hasn't even come out yet. It'll be out next spring. But I think I just want to kind of fully ride through and work with this. Probably the next book I do will be a poetry collection. But going back to what you said, I think some of the increased labeling stuff in restaurants, that's great. And the most helpful things are when the restaurant voluntarily does it, when they put key allergen ingredients in bold on their menus, or they offer a nut-free menu or a dairy-free menu. It's so funny that with all of these restaurants making these efforts, when I talk to parents and they say, oh, we're just never going to take, our son doesn't need to go out to eat, I always say to them, okay, but right now at the age of 5 or 13, going out to eat might not matter much. He's going to want to take his date to prom. Yeah. Do you want that to be his first time in a restaurant?
And be scared?
You have to create a culture of experience and lay some groundwork so that when they graduate and go off to school for college for the first time, they're just not, fish out of water. Yeah.
I mean, that's a really interesting take on it. What would you say the most important thing you've learned in this journey, right, in this book? The whole process, just through your allergies and through all the life experiences, what's the most important thing you think you've learned?
I think that I really came to terms with the fact that even though I don't think of my allergies as a gift, they are an intrinsic part of who I am. And I found myself really writing through meditations on motherhood, on family, on the times in my life when people spontaneously offered to accommodate in a way that felt effortless, and I take real joy and pleasure from those moments. So even though it's heartbreaking the nights that I lose to allergies, the weddings that I have to leave early, the reality is that it is part of who I am and what makes me who I am.
Yeah, it makes you unique and different and makes you who you are, like we said. Is there any advice you think you can give to any of our listeners right now on someone who's kind of really going through that process of learning about allergies? Is there any particular tests or any particular ideas you think that you've encountered in your own allergies discovering all these things?
Well, I would always point you back to your doctor first and foremost. Find a good allergist. Find someone who you trust who seems to be not just reading you boilerplate, but really paying attention to your allergies. And
answering your questions.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing for people to know is that each person, for each allergen, has a different style of reaction, a different severity of reaction, and that style of reaction can change over time. So I have certain foods where my eyelids swell up. I have other foods where I have breathing trouble. I have other foods where it's lower in the body, and knowing, paying attention to your body and believing those cues and not just dismissing it as, well, I'm just being hypersensitive, and giving that information to your doctor so that he can work with you. Maybe what you think is an allergy to apple is really oral allergy syndrome because it's just an itchy mouth. Maybe what's happening is your mouth is recognizing the pollen in the skin of the apple and reacting to that. You can create more space for yourself and more options the more information you have.
So don't live in a bubble. Ask questions. Educate yourself. Go out. We joke because I have some allergies myself, and I'm a Florida native, born and raised, and they tell us it's the worst state to live in for pollen. And of course, every day I wake up going, ugh, why I live here, especially in the summertime when everything's in bloom and going through. So education, don't live in a protective shell. Go out, learn, teach somebody, and go through that process. We're wrapping up here. We're almost out of time. So let me ask you, is there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with anybody that hasn't read the book, or something, that you would just like to share with them?
Just try to have a sense of humor and recognize that, the reason why I wrote the book I did is that, yes, my allergies make me different, but we all have something that makes us different. And in the case of food allergies, my reactions and my vulnerabilities are a little more explicit because they're physical. It's a kiss that results in a hive on the cheek. But the reality is it all goes back to that core need for empathy for everyone around us.
Well, Sandra, I'd like to thank you for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you and getting to talk today. And again, this is Eric Remmel on LifeImprovementRadio.com.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.